Hi, Courtney, back again with more Halloween horror movie recommendations. Now, I have a few movies in, I have a few movies in here that may not be considered horror, they may be more thrillers, but they'll still be perfect to watch for Halloween if you like scary movies. And first one up is, um, it's a movie directed by Ken Russell, who directed Tommy. And it's kind of a vampire movie, but it's not a vampire movie. Well, the story was written by Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, and it was turned into a movie, very short story, and it's called The Lair of the White Worm. It has a really young Hugh Grant in it. Also, Catherine Oxenberg, who's married to Casper Van Dien, and it also has Amanda Donahoe. Sorry, Donahoe. My throat, I don't know what it was. It just kind of like seized up a little bit. And it also has Peter Capaldi, one of the actors who has played the Doctor over the years on Doctor Who. And okay, so there is an archaeologist played by Peter Capaldi named Angus Flint, and he discovers this big giant skull, and it looks like the skull belonging to a giant snake. And there's a legend, uh, something called a white a white worm, which kind of looks more kind of like a dragon a little bit, and it's an old legend that used to, eat virgins and stuff like that, and people would worship it. And a young man named James Hampton, played by Hugh Grant, his ancestors slayed this worm, so he's kind of he's rich, and he's treated like a hero. And what happens is this creature, its remains are found on the farm belonging to sisters Mary and Eve Trent, and Eve's played by Catherine Oxenberg. And after the creature's discovered, a woman by the name of Lady Sylvia Marsh, played by Amanda Donahoe, arrives, and she's really sexy and sultry and everything, and she is a member of this old pagan cult that used to worship the worm or dragon or whatever you want to call it, snake, whatever. And she comes into town, and she starts attacking people, and she's kind of like a snake vampire kind of thing. So she focuses on Eve, who also happens to be James's girlfriend, planning to sacrifice her to the worm. And if you know anything about worms, when you split them in two, the parts go off, and they reform and become a new worm. So that's possibly what's happened to it. But there's a lot of like Christian imagery, and a lot of phallic symbolism, and it's a really kind of trippy movie. But then again, it's from a director who gave you Tommy, so don't expect it to be completely linear. But it's kind of interesting to watch, and so anything that has to do with vampires, kind of give it a watch. And the story was kind of written towards like the end of Bram Stoker's life, so maybe that's why it's kind of out there a little bit. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting movie. So, but if you like vampires, it's pretty good to watch. Um, Next up is another one of my favorite kind of 70s horror films, with that same, atmosphere that I was talking about. And it is The Sentinel. Trying to, trying to get that into frame a little bit better. Doesn't help with the glare in the background, but this is also based on a book written by Jeffrey Convitz, and so he did the screenplay based on his book. But this has a really big cast of people. It's got Ava Gardner, Jose Ferrer, John Carradine, David Carradine's father, who was known for playing a lot of, in a lot of the Universal kind of movies. He kind of did like roles like Dracula and stuff like that. So also has Burgess Meredith, Chris Sarandon, Martin Balsam. There's also small roles in there from Christopher Walken and Jeff Goldblum and Beverly D'Angelo. I mean, there's a lot of people in this cast. It's just, amazing how many people are in there. But a model named Allison Parker, played by Christina Rains, she rents an apartment in a brownstone, and she has all these weird and wacky neighbors, and they're kind of some of them are kind of eccentric, and some of them are kind of weird, and some of them are kind of creepy. But she moves into this apartment kind of against her boyfriend, her boyfriend's wishes. Her boyfriend's played by Chris Sarandon, and she has kind of a little bit of a trauma in her life because I think a little bit a while back when she was probably like maybe in high school or something, she witnessed her father engaging in sexual activities, and for some reason it drove her crazy, and she tried to kill herself by slitting her wrists. And so she's kind of haunted by that, and then sometime after that incident happened, her father passed away, and so they never really had a very good relationship to begin with. So she starts, having nightmares about that, and they kind of escalate more when she moves into the building. And she soon learns from the woman that, showed the place to her that there's only one other person living in the building with her, and it's an old blind priest up on the very top floor. Nobody else lives in the building. It's just her and the priest. So she's wondering where all these other people came from then. And so it's got a lot of psychological horror to it, and creepy imagery, and it always keeps you guessing what's going on. Is she really like going crazy, or I don't know, maybe she's being kind of gaslighted. It's brought up the fact that her boyfriend's ex-wife, he was kind of accused of killing her, but they couldn't really prove it. So is her boyfriend behind all this, trying to make her crazy just because he can? And so it does have kind of religious undertones to it, because it deals with her trying to commit suicide, and it has a really weird kind of twist at the end of it. And there's actually a sequel to the novel that is based, off the Sentinel, and it's called The Guardian. I can't tell you anything about that because it'll spoil the Sentinel, but yeah, I saw like this on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments, and I saw the scene they were talking about, and it was like, that really is kind of actually creepy. So it's a good movie. I like it. It might seem like it meanders and is a little slow in parts, but it's really good, and it has an all-star kind of cast, so you won't ever be bored with it. So next up, another movie that was remade recently, not recently, but along with remakes of other classic '80s horror films, is The Stepfather with Terry O'Quinn, and they had the remake of it, which is okay. This is much better. The original is always better. It also has Jill Schoelen in it. She's been in a couple of kind of thriller or horror kind of movies. The Phantom of the Opera movie with Robert Englund in it. When a Stranger Calls Back. A movie directed by Wes Craven called Chiller, like a TV kind of movie. But so she's in it, and also Shelley Hack. And this was kind of based on a true story about a man who murdered his family and then disappeared, and he changed his identity, and after a while on America's Most Wanted, the story was shown and pictures were shown, and neighbors of his recognized him and turned him in. So that's basically the plot of this. So I guess we'll just call him Jerry Blake, because that's the name that he goes by, Terry O'Quinn. The movie starts off with a scene of him, going through the day, adjusting his tie, having a cup of coffee, getting his briefcase. But around the house, everybody else in the family has been murdered by him. And he's a kind of, guy who wants like an all-American family, perfect wife, perfect kids, dog, just, the American dream. And for anybody else, it turns more into a nightmare. So he meets this woman named Susan, played by Shelley Hack, and she has a 16-year-old daughter, Stephanie, played by Jill Schoelen. And he, kind of moves in with the family, and Stephanie, kind of rebels at him because he's not her real dad, and he tries to kind of corral the family and try to make them be perfect, the all-American family. And she feels really, really uneasy around Jerry, and but he tries to be kind of nice in the beginning. He gets her a dog, and so but after a while she kind of sees that Jerry's not who he seems to be, and he kind of has like these moments where he like slips, and she hears him ranting in the basement laundry room one day, and so she just she starts to kind of not trust him, and puts her mom in a disposition, because this is her husband, and so that affects the family dynamic. And there's also a young man who is related to the family that we see in the opening of the movie being killed, so he's going off trying to find Jerry and get revenge. And so it's a really suspenseful movie. Terry O'Quinn is great in this movie, and the fact that he's just so creepy, and sometimes you want to like him because he's just so affable and all that, but he's crazy and he's psychotic, and if you don't adhere to his perfect standards, he'll kill you. And so this went on to spawn like 2 sequels to it, where, you know, the ending of this, you know, you can kind of see a sequel coming to it, but, you know, it also seems like it's perfect the way that it is. So, but it's a really good movie, and, you know, he's not like, you know, a real slasher villain. He's not like a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael Myers, but still, there's something more kind of off and scary about him because he's more human and not like kind of supernaturally driven, you know, like Freddy or Jason are the way that they kind of made Michael Myers, you know, before they kind of like, you know, retconned all the, you know, continuity of the sequels with this new Halloween that came out. So it's a very creepy film. So next up is another movie based on a novel, and a novel written by Robert Marasco. Okay, and it's directed and produced by Dan Curtis, creator of Dark Shadows. So it has that kind of Dark Shadows feel again, and it's from the 70s, so it has that 70s atmospheric, you know, kind of, you know, edge of your seat kind of feeling, but it's also kind of, you know, otherworldly, and it is Burnt Offerings, and it stars Karen Black, late Karen Black, who also was in Dan Curtis's trilogy of terror. That's good, by the way. You should watch that too. If I had it, I would talk about it, but I don't. Hopefully I'll have it one day, and I'll talk about it. And it also stars Oliver Reed from another movie I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. It also has Burgess Meredith. Again, Burgess Meredith. He's pretty good at being in horror and kind of, you know, psychological things. He was in a lot of Twilight Zone episodes from the original series, so. And he also narrated the Twilight Zone movie. So, also Eileen Heckart. And it also has Betty Davis in it, you know, who was also good at doing thriller horror kind of movies, you know. So, this family, Marion, played by Karen Black, and her husband Ben, played by Oliver Reed, and their son, and Ben's aunt, played by Betty Davis, Aunt Elizabeth, they are going to look after this summer, this home for the summer, by this family, the Allardyces, and Burgess Meredith and Eileen Heckart play the children of Mrs. Allardyce, who owns the home, and they're going to take care of it for the summer, and, you know, vacation there. And all they have to do is look after their elderly mother, who lives upstairs. And so they stay, and it, like I said, it's one of those atmospheric kind of 70s movies where it's kind of almost like, you know, dreamlike, and, you know, you're wondering if everything that's happening is, you know, really happening, or if it's just, you know, the imaginations of our characters, you know, their minds playing tricks on them. But so Marion says that, you know, she'll look in on Mrs. Allardyce, and things start to go kind of, you know, wrong in the house. Marion seems to be, you know, fixating on all of, you know, spending all of her time taking care of Mrs. Allardyce, and, you know, polishing and taking care of her pictures and her knickknacks, and, you know, her music boxes and stuff like that, and kind of ignoring her husband and her son. And soon a lot of things happen later where her son gets sick, and Elizabeth starts, not feeling well. When we first meet her, she's Betty Davis. She's vivacious and, not like a typical, grandmother, great aunt, but she starts, getting tired and not having a lot of energy, and it's basically like a haunted house kind of movie, kind of with a little bit of like a ghost kind of story mixed into it, and so um, it's like the house kind of almost has a mind of its own. It kind of has almost like the haunting, the 1960s, the haunting kind of feel to it, except it's more of like the 70s. So kind of it's 70s equivalent, and Karen Black does a good job in this, and so does Oliver Reed, and but so of course it has kind of like a twist towards the end, and I kind of knew about the twist a little bit, but not all of it. So because it does look like some of the characters look like they might actually get away, but then it just swerves, and you're like, I didn't see that coming, and it gives it a really kind of creepy kind of feeling at the end. But it's a really good movie. So and it's got that bright 70s kind of lighting to it. So I mean, you could even watch it like at night in the dark alone, and it's not as scary, but still you hear like a little noise creaking in the house, and you might just kind of be like, what was that? Oh. But it's a really good movie. Kind of almost like a theme here with movies being based off kind of horror, thriller, scary books. So this is based off a book by Ira Levin, and it's one of my favorite horror movies. With as you can tell from a lot of movies I talk about, I like horror movies that have a lot more like atmosphere and don't rely on a lot of gore and stuff, even though I do like those kinds of films. But this is Rosemary's Baby, directed by Roman Polanski and starring Mia Farrow. And it's very faithful to the book. I've only gotten halfway through the book because as I'm reading it, I haven't seen anything that's not in the movie that's in the book. So I've only gotten stuck on it because, it's just like watching the movie. You can read the book or watch the movie, and they're just like simultaneously together. But so it's directed by Roman Polanski and produced by William Castle, who did all the original, the Haunting of Hill House and stuff like that. And so it follows the couple of Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse. Guy Woodhouse played by John Cassavetes, and they move into an apartment at the Bramford, which is portrayed by the famous Dakota Apartments in New York City. And Guy's a struggling stage actor, though he's done commercials. And they move in, and a lot of their neighbors are older people. So they live next door to their neighbors, played by Sidney Blackmer and Ruth Gordon, who won an Academy Award for this movie. So their neighbors are older, and so Rosemary and Guy are trying to have a baby, and so they Guy gets really close to their neighbors Roman and Minnie, and soon afterwards, they're planning, baby night where they're gonna have a romantic dinner and, try to conceive having a baby. And Minnie brings them over like a chocolate mousse dessert, and you can kind of tell a little bit after, because Rosemary tries a bit of it and says it has this weird kind of taste to it, so she doesn't eat the rest. But afterwards, she kind of gets like, a little lightheaded and everything. So you can tell right away that there was something in it, like it was drugged. But she has this really weird dream where she sees herself being raped by this creature with, really demonic yellow eyes. And, when she wakes up the next morning, she has scratches on her back, and her husband's just like, I got kind of carried away, and, which is also kind of weird because she's like passed out, but still. But afterwards, of course, she finds out she's pregnant, and everything just kind of goes downhill from there. She starts seeing one doctor who's a friend of, Roman and Minnie, and she starts kind of looking, really thin and haggard, and her and Guy's friends that are, around their age compliment that she looks awful, and, but she just feels like something's not right, and, so she then tries going to a younger doctor, played by a young Charles Grodin, actually, and, trying to, take care of her baby, because, she's pregnant, she's a mother, she's protective of her child, but she thinks that all of the older people in her building are trying to take the baby from her. And of course, everybody kind of knows what the ending of Rosemary's Baby is, but for anybody who hasn't seen it, I won't spoil it. But they do want the child, but not for the reasons that she's thinking. I think she's thinking more that they want to like sacrifice the baby. But so it has that atmosphere, again, that creepy 70s kind of atmosphere, and it's shot really well, and the parts that are supposed to be dreamlike feel dreamlike, and you're with Rosemary, you're rooting for her to get away, and everything to be okay with her, and you're as paranoid and scared as she is, and but so yes, it's very much like the book. It's very faithful to it, and it's a classic. It's a classic movie, and again, I like stuff that's more psychological and paranoid. Like I said, you don't have to just rely on somebody running around stabbing people with knives, and nudity and a lot of gore, and just stuff that like kind of attacks your head a little bit more. So this is a really good movie. I love Mia Farrow in this movie. So that's another good one. Okay, I don't think I have any more based on books. Oh yeah, I do have one based on a book. So it's not exactly a horror film per se. It has, a kind of lot of imagery in it that's kind of horror related, and it does kind of have like it does have nudity, and it has language, and it has bloody gory parts that are kind of really visceral kind of horror, but it's based on a novel written by Andrew Niederman, ghostwriter for the V.C. Andrews books, and writer of a movie that I talked about earlier called Pin. And this is The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves, directed by Taylor Hackford. And like I said, it's based on a book. So, I don't know what that was. My screen kind of went blank a little bit. I don't know what that was. A glitch. So, if you see a little black flash, I have no idea what it was. But, Kevin Lomax, played by Keanu Reeves, is a young hotshot Southern lawyer, and he gets picked up by a man named John Milton, by Al Pacino, who runs a law firm, and he wants, Kevin to be a part of his firm. So, so Kevin and his wife, Marianne, played by Charlize Theron, go to New York, and Keanu Reeves joins the law firm, and Jeffrey Jones is there as one of the lawyers of the company, and so a case comes up where a client of the law firm, Big Hotshot, played by Craig T. Nelson, is accused of murdering his wife, and Kevin goes to defend him in court, and so Milton kind of takes Lomax underneath his wing and shows him around, and Marianne's pawed off on the wives of other lawyers of the firm, and she starts going kind of crazy, where she starts seeing things like the faces of the wives are all like distorted and demonic, and they're a couple that are also kind of trying to have a child, and trying to conceive, and they're having a hard time doing it, and she has this one nightmare. It's really creepy. So I guess if you're really squeamish, it's probably like the only thing that actually really makes me kind of like in this movie. So but of course you can tell by his name being John Milton who Al Pacino is supposed to be. He's supposed to be the devil. I mean, it's in the title too, the devil's advocate. But the reason that he has so much interest in Kevin is kind of a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not that hard of a spoiler. You can kind of see it coming a mile away if you pay attention to the movie, and but I think Al Pacino is phenomenal in this movie. I mean, who else could you think of to play the devil? Oh, and of course, it's Al Pacino, so he's gonna ham things up. And I guess Keanu Reeves does an okay job. I really wish they wouldn't try to put him in roles where he's supposed to have an accent of some sort, because it didn't work out very well in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, trying to have a British accent, and it doesn't work out too well him trying to have a Southern accent in this movie. So stop putting him in movies where he needs accents. Just let him be Keanu Reeves. I mean, you don't expect him to be like, Bill and Ted Keanu Reeves for the rest of his life, but I mean, just let him be Keanu Reeves. Don't give him an accent. Charlize Theron is really good in this movie, and she plays her character very well. Being kind of to the like the brink of her sanity being questioned, and being kind of almost like neglected by her husband, and it's just, you feel very sorry for her. I think probably in this movie she's probably the only character you'd probably really care about besides Kevin's mother, played by Judith Ivey. But Judith Ivey's character is really kind of religious, so she might kind of get on your nerves a little bit with her her religious beliefs and stuff like that, but she's not that bad. But it's a really good movie, and like I said, it's more thriller with horror elements, but it's still got enough imagery in it that it'd be great to watch on Halloween. So, alright, definitely nothing else based on books in this stack. And of course, this video is going to run long because I had like 10 movies. And so, going back through the stack a little differently. Alright, everybody knows that David Cronenberg is really good at body horror movies. He's had, The Fly and Videodrome, and he's really good at that body horror that just makes you feel disgusting and icky and everything. But I actually like this movie, again because of Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments. But it is The Brood, and Oliver Reed is in this movie, and it also has Samantha Eggar. I know her best being in the Dr. Dolittle movie, so it's kind of weird to see her in this kind of film. But so it was written and directed by David Cronenberg. So this is all from his head, not from anybody else's. Okay. In this institute, Dr. Hal Raglan, played by Oliver Reed, does experiments with psychoplasmics, where it's supposed to release pent-up emotions in patients. So stuff like grief and anger and I guess any other sort of feelings that patients have. So he has this one patient named Nola, played by Samantha Eggar. Her and her husband, played by Art Hindle, who's also in two of my other favorite horror films, Black Christmas and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 1978 remake. He and Nola are kind of separated, and they have a daughter, and so she has all this anger pent up at her husband and a woman that she thinks he's having an affair with, and her husband trying to have sole custody of her daughter, and but it seems like whomever she has all these pent up feelings of anger towards outside of the institute, they start getting killed in gruesome kind of ways. And Nola never leaves the institute, so it can't be her killing these people, even though it goes out towards people that she doesn't like. And what is happening is, it's not exactly spoiler material, but what is happening is she's actually giving birth to these physical manifestations of her anger and her hatred, which is why it's called The Brood. So all of her negative emotions, she's actually literally giving birth to these childlike, representations of her negative feelings. And so in true Cronenberg fashion, there's a lot of, body horror there, and the scene that I saw on the Bravo special was another reason why I bought this movie, because that one scene is like, well, if that's what one part of it's like, what is the whole movie like? But yeah, so so it's very, again, very kind of psychological, and since it deals, with people's inner feelings coming out, physically manifested, you watch it kind of wondering, would your feelings come out the exact same way? And so, so it's got that Cronenberg fashion. Um, so kind of probably not as disgusting as The Fly or Videodrome, but kind of it still has that Cronenberg style. That it's a Cronenberg film, and it's actually pretty good. So next up is a little more of a modern horror film, and it's so it's got parts of it that are kind of scary, but most of it is kind of hilariously funny. And so it's written and directed by James Gunn, and I mostly got it because I am a big fan of Nathan Fillion, and it's Slither. Now, they actually talked about this on like a Bravo special that came out after the 100 Scariest Movie Moments for like more scary movie moments, and Slither popped up. And so it's about, of course, aliens arriving in a small town and infecting the people of the town. And Nathan Fillion is the sheriff of the town, Bill Party, and he has to, kind of protect his town from being, overrun by these kind of slug-like monsters. So, kind of almost like Night of the Creeps kind of feel in the aliens, except they're all red and slithery, and the ones in Night of the Creeps were more black leech looking kind of aliens. But that's the same kind of tone of the aliens. But yeah, they possess people. They slither into any orifice that they can find and take over the person that they control. The main one that they take over is Michael Rooker's character, and his name is Grant. But he becomes like the main infectee of the aliens, and his actions kind of control the way the rest of the aliens take over people. And he has a wife played by Elizabeth Banks named Starla, and Starla and Bill kind of had this thing going on with each other, but now she's married to Grant, and but Grant is like patient zero of the aliens, and what happens to him starts to run through other people of the town, especially with a woman that he's been kind of cheating on Starla with. But so there's a lot of kind of disgusting moments and a lot of hilarious moments, but I actually like it. So again, there are parts that kind of creep you out a little bit, but it mostly makes me laugh more than anything else. But so like I said, it has kind of that Night of the Creeps kind of thing, and of course, like all other kind of like alien movies, like The Blob and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff like that. So it's a really good movie. So I recommend it. Next up, it says from the producers of My Bloody Valentine, which we know is one of my favorite horror movies. So it's kind of in that vein with movies that kind of got a little butchered in the early 80s. This one is from 1980, so it kind of fell in the same vein where it's one of those movies that got, a little edited. Sorry if I'm playing with my hair a little bit. I can see it on camera and I'm not liking it. So, but it is Happy Birthday to Me. So, it takes place at, well, most of it's set at Crawford Academy. And of course it has a clique with all the popular people in it, the top 10. And one of the members, or I think she wants to be a member of the clique, is Jenny, played by Melissa Sue Anderson from Little House on the Prairie. And so of course all these, cliques, almost like high school, except they're college cliques, so they're a little more lofty. But so I guess one by one members of the top 10 start dying in kind of gruesome deaths. And I think the original poster said it was like, some of the most bizarre death scenes that you've ever seen. I wouldn't really say kind of bizarre, but, definitely slasher fuel. But, so, it's mostly kind of a slasher whodunit kind of thing. Who's killing these kids? Is it Jenny because she has a traumatic past that probably has, affected her, her psyche and everything. So, is she doing it, subconsciously, or is somebody else doing it and trying to frame her? It's a really good slasher movie, and it has a twist kind of ending. So, but of course, and of course, it's Melissa Sue Anderson. She's Mary from Little House on the Prairie, so you sympathize with her, and you want her to be all right, and you don't want it to be her, and then you're wondering, why does anybody want to go after her and frame her? But it is a really good slasher movie. So, of course, it's in the heyday of slashers. So, it's really good, has great atmosphere, and a nice twist. So, and since we're running long, I got one more movie to talk about. One more. And again, around the slasher early craze of the 80s, and, fell victim to, having to be, like, heavily edited. But this is The Burning. And, so a bunch of, kids at a camp play a prank on the, janitor, caretaker of the camp. And his name is Cropsy. And it goes really wrong, where he's burnt all over his body, and he has to have like all these operations for skin grafts, and they're not taking to his skin. So of course he goes out for revenge on not really the people who did it to him, but basically revenge on the kids at the camp, and not even the camp where it happened, just on a random camp. So, kind of a little bit of tones of Friday the 13th. So, but it's, of course, got Tom Savini special effects. And this, was actually, produced and written by the Weinsteins, Bob and Harvey. So think of that what you will. It has cameos, or cameo kind of, well, not kind of cameos. early roles of stars like Holly Hunter and Jason Alexander and Fisher Stevens. And one of the main characters is played by Brian Backer, who I mostly remember from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, playing Mark Ratner. So, so it's got a lot of young talent. Kind of, like I said, almost Friday the 13th-esque. Written by the Weinsteins with special effects by Tom Savini. So make of that what you will, of the gore and stuff. And of course, there's one scene in it that always got kind of, edited a lot, because it was really, really, really kind of just comes out of nowhere and was just filled with a lot of gore. But it's a pretty good revenge slasher kind of movie, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. So, and I know this video is really long. This is actually now probably the longest video that I have made talking about my horror movies. But so a lot of good choices in this group, and some more choices to come until Halloween gets here. So until I see you next time, have a nice day.